Hi, I'm Micah Clark. Thank you for joining us today. I want to give you an update on this week's activities at the Indiana General Assembly. We only dealt with one bill that the AFA is watching, but it's a bill I've mentioned before, and they had a hearing on Wednesday in the House Elections Committee. That's Senate Bill 287. Now, all live Senate bills are in the House. All live House bills are in the Senate now for consideration. And on Wednesday morning, they took testimony that lasted quite some time. About 40 people testified on Senate Bill 287. This is a very contentious bill in some ways, but to me it makes a lot of sense. And what this bill says simply is that school board candidates have to run like every other office in Indiana, elected office. So that means they have to have a party identification. You know, we require this for things that you probably wouldn't even think are all that political. County surveyor, county coroner. I don't know that Democrats and Republicans see dead bodies differently as a coroner. It's probably a debate over spending it for that office. But we even require those two offices, which are really not that political, to have political party affiliations. And of course, school boards have become very partisan, very political as far as worldview goes, on how money is being spent, parents' rights, transparency on curriculum, things like that. And voters are often confused. When we do our iVoter guide, or any voter guide, when election time comes around, I'm often asked about school board candidates because people don't know much about them, and they run right now without a party affiliation. So it's almost like a name ID contest. And a lot of times people say, well, I may know this person, or this person maybe is my doctor, or somebody told me about this person. But they don't really often know what they stand for. And of course, you know, campaign mail sometimes is pretty useless. It's a picture of a family, a little bio info, and that's it. It's for name ID. But at least with this bill, the person would have to either run as Republican, Democrat, or Independent, and that would have to match their voting history as well. So voters would at least know a little bit about their worldview. It's interesting, one state that's done this is North Carolina. In North Carolina, they allow counties to choose whether or not school board candidates want to run or should run as partisan or nonpartisan. And what they found was, in the counties where they do this in North Carolina, where they actually have to declare party affiliation, the voter input or the voter activity goes up. More people vote for school board candidates when there's partisanship or partisan label than when it's nonpartisan. And we often hear people complain about a lack of voter involvement, low voter turnout, and it really drops off down the ballot. People come, they may only vote for president or governor or senator. They get down to the lower office of school board and they don't know. So at least this would tell a little bit about people. That's the argument in favor of the bill. The argument against the bill is that school boards should not be partisan. Well, I think they already are partisan. And as an example, the largest policy board in the state of Indiana, the top school board, is the Indiana State School Board. And that's a partisan school board. People may not realize that, but under the laws or the code creating that agency, that board, the governor has to appoint people, but they cannot have more than 5 or 6 members of the same party appointed. So the governor knows who he is appointing, and he knows their political party affiliation. I think voters should know that same thing. But that's the debate. The bill only passed by 1 vote in the Senate. So this is going to be a very tight bill to get through. I think there'll be amendments, maybe watering it down, maybe changing some things in it to get those votes to make it more palatable to legislators who have questions. I'm okay with the bill as is. One of the arguments against it is that it forces a school board candidate to run in the primary and the general election in May and in fall. I don't have a problem with that. Right now they only run in the primary, but that's an argument against it. Another argument against it I've heard is, well, this will cause school board members, just average people, to have to pay a lot of money or raise a lot of money to run for office. Well, the same could be said for any other small office. They're important offices, but the coroner or the surveyor has to raise money for yard signs as well. So I don't know that we make an exclusion for such an important office as school board. So we're watching that very closely. They only took testimony this week. They'll come back next Wednesday with amendments and a vote to get it out of committee, and then on to the full House floor where they may amend it on second reading, and then they'll come back after that and vote on the final vote. And that's where we'll see what happens with the bill. Another issue I want to talk about, and I don't talk about this very often because it doesn't happen very often as far as AFA is concerned. We have issues in legislation we deal with a lot. Every now and then I'll talk about regulatory code or agency things. But Governor Mike Braun did something this week, and I want to commend him for it, for doing something very common sense, pro-family, and very popular with Hoosiers. I've seen polling on both these issues, and that is he signed an executive order, 2 of them, this week, much like President Trump has done. And I think it showed real leadership by Governor Braun to stand up and say, this is common sense, this is for families, and this is for girls. His first executive order deals with respecting biological differences between male and female in Indiana. It directs state agencies to define sex and gender as male and female. Gender is synonymous with sex, and there's only male and there's only female. It also says that the state cannot fund programs that promote gender ideology or gender confusion. This is a very important bill, executive order. I commend him for signing that. We'll have a link to this so you can read it. It explains it a little better, but very good executive order on the difference between men and women and how that should be defined in law and what state agencies should do to respect the truth of biology and science, is that there's only 2 genders, male and female. The second one goes along those same lines, and it is concerning girls' sports. And it says that the Indiana Commission for Higher Education shall review policies to protect women under Title IX of the rule of Title IX, prohibiting males from competing in female sports. Now, this is important. It's a good step forward. But as you know, any executive order, whether it's President Trump's, President Biden's, or Governor Braun's, can be erased or repealed with an election with the next governor. So while I commend the governor for doing both of these, both are important, both are pro-family, both are common sense, both have strong support in polling, 70% plus. You don't find a lot of issues in Indiana or in national politics either where you have 70% support. But people do not want men in women's locker rooms exposing themselves, or men competing with women, or men injuring women because of their strength differences, which you've seen in volleyball and other things. We don't want titles taken away from girls by men who think they're women or pretending to be women. We don't want girls to lose scholarships because of that. We want women to compete and win titles in women's sports. Now, the reason I mention this, though, there is another bill dealing with this, and this doesn't supersede that bill. House Bill 1041 is now in the Senate. It's passed the House, mostly along party line votes. There were 3 Democrats who voted for it and 1 Republican who voted no. But this bill concerns protecting girls' sports at the collegiate level. In 2022, we passed the same bill number, 1041, protecting girls' sports in K through 12. You may remember Governor Holcomb vetoed it. Governor Holcomb wouldn't sign executive orders like this, but he vetoed it. The House overrode it and Senate overrode it pretty quickly, mostly along party line vote back then too. The culture has shifted even since then, stronger in favor of protecting girls. As I said, Hoosiers do not want men in women's sports. So that is why we need 1041 still, because as I said, an executive order can be repealed, but the law is much harder to change. And so 1041 this session, protecting girls' sports at the collegiate level, needs to pass. So it'd be helpful if you called your state senator to support House Bill 1041 to protect girls' sports. We used to call it the Fairness in Girls Sports Act. You can simply call your senator and say, I support House Bill 1041 to protect girls' sports in Indiana. So these 2 things go hand in hand. Both are important. Both need to be done as a policy statement, as a pro-family statement, as a pro-women statement. And I'll mention this too. Many of you watched the president's speech this week. The morning after, or the day after, on Monday evening, before his Tuesday night speech, the U.S. Senate voted on a similar bill to 1041. at the federal level to protect girls' sports. It got a majority of votes, but didn't get the 60 votes it needed because of the filibuster rule. And unfortunately, every Democrat voted against protecting girls' sports. But I will say this, I was very pleased with the president too on that speech Tuesday night. It was a long speech, but I thought two of his best lines, one was kind of a humorous line, but policy-wise, he said, you know, we were told by the media and told by members of Congress that we had to pass a bill to protect the border. He said we didn't need a new bill, we needed a new president because border crossings have dropped by over 90%. But I think the more important line in his speech, and that was a powerful line, but I thought something else he said was much more powerful and telling. And he talked about the transgender agenda and how it affects kids, sterilizing them, giving them surgeries, giving them drugs that can harm them. And he made the statement that I want to say something to kids who are struggling with gender identity. God made you perfect the way you are. And I thought that was outstanding. Very different change from the previous administration that was promoting gender confusion. So I thank President Trump for standing up for biological truth and recognizing, as the Bible says, in the beginning he created them male and female. And that's still the case and always will be. So thanks to President Trump. And again, thank you, Governor Braun, for these two important executive orders on biological truth and protecting girls' sports. And in reference to that, it would help if you call your senator on House Bill 1041. And again, on Senate Bill 287, if that's an issue you're interested in, it is before the House Elections Committee still. It'll be voted on Wednesday, and then if they pass it, it'll move on to the House floor. So if you're interested in that, call your state representative about Senate Bill 287 to give voters a little bit more information on who they're voting for at election time on school boards. It's not a silver bullet, doesn't fix everything, but we are for transparency for voters and for parents, for school parents, on who is going to be governing their school. And I think Senate Bill 287 helps a little bit in that regard. Well, I'm Micah Clark. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.